Welcome to another episode of Latinos Who Thrive. What role does paying attention to God's guidance play in your business or career moves? This week, we bring you the story of Carlos Fourzan. A devout believer in God's guidance, Carlos is Senior Vice President of Entravision Communications in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But Carlos was not born with a silver spoon or having a pedigree to start at the top. Instead, he has scaled up, starting out as an entry-level sales representative to reach the level of vice president. As you might say, the rest is history. Latinos Who Thrive starts right now. Carlos, welcome to Latinos Who Thrive.
Hi, Victor. Thank you for the invitation.
It's a great pleasure for me to reconnect with you because I met you, about 20 years ago?
Yes, or like early 2000, like 2002, 2003.
Correct. So for listeners, Carlos Fourzan is, at the time when I met him, a sales rep. I don't know if you're already a senior sales rep with Univision Radio, but if you weren't, you quickly climbed to that slot because of your expertise and the methodology that you use for sales. So Carlos, one of the things that I found extremely interesting about you when I first met you, when I was doing talk shows for Univision, was how you had acquired a mastery for the Arbitron rating systems. Talk about what motivated you to develop an expertise in that area.
Yes, well, I remember when I started in sales, I had come from an automotive aftermarket industry expertise. I had been a inventory control manager for a few years in this automotive warehouse. And I've always liked numbers, right? What fascinated me to learn more about the Nielsen and Arbitron back then ratings was the fact that even though it's a number, there's a story behind it. Because people love stories, right? We adapt better when we hear a story than when we just see facts. So I started diving into like how ratings are, measured and what that means and how they change and whether, the programming fluctuates the ratings, whether the commercial breaks, where they're at, affects the ratings. So learning all of that then helped me convey that story when I was talking to clients. Because at the end of the day, if you've been in the media industry for years, you know that, me as a station having ratings is one thing, but it means nothing to the client, right? It's just a feature of my station. But what I can do with the ratings that will benefit the client, then it becomes a benefit for the client. And how to utilize that better for their benefit was able to help me close more sales.
And that's what impressed me about you is you had instant credibility because you could show me the numbers for what hours were the optimum time slots to be able to launch new programs. We launched 3 separate new programs within one book that translates, if I remember correctly, to 3 months. Is that correct?
Back then, El Paso was a quarterly 4-book, per year kind of a market. Nowadays, they're monthlies. But back then, you're correct. It was a measurement of 3 months.
And in 3 months, we could have a rating of 1 to 3 points, where
Correct.
There was no rating whatsoever.
That is true.
So again, I used a similar strategy in the programming of a new show because I knew who would be on the road at the time slot. I knew using psychographic measurements, I knew who was most likely to tune in to a new show. And of course, the rest is history. Carlos, you shared that you came from the aftermarket automobile parts industry and you got fascinated by numbers and the stories behind the numbers. So talk to me about your climb at Univision Radio. So you started out as a sales rep. What was the highest position that you acquired at the station in El Paso where I first met you?
So correct. So when I interviewed for media back in '99, before Univision Radio, I was hired by Entravision back then in '99 to be their research director. And one of the things that I remember on that interview, they told me, but you don't have any media experience. You don't even know about Nielsen and you don't know about ratings. And I told them, here's the thing. In life, there's going to be things that I don't know about, that I'm not going to be, that challenge does not prevent me from learning. And I can tell you more about numbers than the person that has been in media. So just give me a chance and I'll prove it to you. And I started as a research director, putting all these presentations together. And then I became a TV rep for Entravision. After 2 years, back then the GM, Domingo Lopez, interviewed me, and then he transferred me to Univision Radio. And that's when I met you. Like you mentioned, I was the new kid, right? There was 5 other sellers at that point, and I was just a regular rep. Within months of, I remember he told me we had these accounts that used to buy from us. And because, they fought with the rep or they fought with the station, they're really good client. I mean, they have potential, but they're not buying from us. If you call them and they buy, you keep them. And I remember one of those clients was Verizon. Back then, they were going through an agency out of Los Angeles. And when I called the agency and I said who I was and who I represented, that the person just told me, oh, you know what? You have some whatever, beep to call me because, you guys screwed me. I flew there. You didn't show up for the meeting. No. You went to a golf tournament. I mean, the guy, I let him vent, right? And what I could gather was when it was going to be time for the annual meeting, the former rep skipped the meeting because he was playing golf. So that's when they canceled. So after he was done, I didn't stop him. And, because I've learned that when there's an objection, that's not the time to sell. That's the time to understand and learn, right? So I let him talk. And then when he was done, it's like, I understand your frustration. And I would be equally upset as you are. So empathy, right? You always lead with empathy after an objection,
right?
But you want to learn more. And I said, but what did that, what did that cost? Why, and then he explained to me, well, I look back in front of the client, I didn't lose the business, but I'm definitely not going to buy you guys, even though you are a leader in the ratings. And he went on and I said, well, I have great news for you. I said, I'm not a golfer. So the next time you're in town, I will definitely be there. But this is what I can do for you. And then that's when you understand the objection, right? And then I told him what it was going to be fixed and changed and the solution. So I was able to close that account. And within months, they actually started spending even more and more. So then I became a senior. Back then, they were called senior account executives, right? Now they have so many different names. But back then, I was a senior account executive. Then 2 years after that, I became the sales manager because Univision Radio would always see that I would take the younger sellers and I would even go on calls with them and help them sell and close. The seller would keep the sale. So they would always be like, we have 2 sales managers, right? Back then it was like Margie and you, because you still go out and help the sales team, which is great. So when Margie left, they're like, the automatic, fit would be, we promoted you to sales manager. And then I became a sales manager for Univision, for Univision Radio, and was there until 2011. So I was a manager for 4 years before I left Univision Radio.
Carlos, that's a very prestigious position, having come from the industry to be a general manager of a market station that was 15th Spanish market in the country, I believe, at the time. So tell us, apart from what you've already shared, what were some of the other things that you did? Because you make it sound easy, but it's not. It's like there was a methodology, there was a process for you to scale up so fast. And so what would you attribute it to? other than having good listening skills, good empathy to listen to objections and then address the objections, what else can you share with us that was instrumental in your success?
And this is something that even when I hire people as a manager, I always tell them, I look more for aptitude, right? I mean, more attitude than aptitude. And the attitude that I had was, I know I'm not an expert in media when I started, but I had this drive inside, right? This fire inside that I was probably going to have to work harder than the rest, than my colleagues, because my bachelor's is in computer information systems. It was never in marketing. It was not in communications. So I was going to have to spend longer hours at the office, learn on my own, keep learning, right? So it was that sense of self-motivation, right? That fire, that even though I may not have a skill or the aptitude today, that doesn't mean I'm not going to have it. Why? Because we're all created with greatness, right? Because and this is personally, right? I believe in God, and I know I was created in his image, and he's great. So if he created me, I have greatness inside me, but it's not going to come out by itself. I'm going to have to work at it, work longer. And even if it was a mundane thing, like turning a production order, I was going to do my best, right? Because I know how I do the mundane will determine how I'm going to be doing the great things in life. So I didn't care if it was a small job, if it was a big job, I always said yes. If it was a bad account or a good account, I always said yes. And I always, that drive to just keep going and learning. And you know what? Does it mean every single time I presented something, I closed? No, I didn't. There was many no's that I got at the beginning, but it's learning from that, right? It's not staying down, because in life, whether you are a media rep, whether you are a business owner, whether you are a worker, doesn't matter what you do. Your life is challenging, and there's going to have its good days, and it's going to have its bad days. And in those bad days, the key is, you know what? It's just one day. Today, there was a no. You need to get up and keep going. And that's what I did. I stayed longer. I would, look at webinars. I would attend seminars. I would look online, tutorials from Nielsen so that I could understand, right? And then learn what it is to sell advertising. Because again, my background was in computer information systems. So how to make that transition from my left brain, just stats and facts, to more of a storytelling and learning how to tell your story, because everybody has a message, right? But how you say your message really matters. So they would call me crazy. They would tell me that I'm nuts because I was staying late. But I knew that, if I wanted to be great, and I did, I needed to say no to certain things, like going out and having a couple of drinks with the guys or whatever after work, and stay there and learn. Because I know that whenever you say yes to something, you're actually saying no to something else. And looking back, it was deferred gratification, because back then they were having, good time, and I needed to learn. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be like that forever, because then you're working towards your future, right? Whatever you decide today is going to affect your tomorrow. And the younger you learn that, the better. Because I know I missed a lot of opportunities when I was younger, before you met me, that I missed because I didn't step into that opportunity. So that is, I think, what helped me grow faster was, doing that little extra. Even though I was doing great in sales and I could have done less and not keep learning, that would have still satisfied my boss. That didn't drive me, right? I didn't want to do less if I know I can do more. It didn't matter whether less would satisfy my boss. What mattered to me was, if I know I can do more and I can still learn more, why not?
Carlos, what kind of days did you have? How long were your work days?
My work days would start at 7:30, and I would leave the office about 7, 8.
Yeah, 12 hours easily, right?
Easily. Until
Like
this day.
the founder of Holiday Inn says, I work 8 hours a day to keep up with my competition, and I work another 8 hours to stay ahead of the competition.
Yes, like I was going to say, till this day, right? I've been in Albuquerque
Absolutely.
now. I've been in Albuquerque now. In May will be 10 years.
So talk about your move to Albuquerque. Was that a promotion, or were you recruited for another market? What happened that you ended up in Albuquerque?
So in April of 2012, well, remember I mentioned I stayed in Univision Radio till November of 2011. There was some reshifting, right? And some of the positions during the reshifting got eliminated, one being the sales manager in El Paso. So when that happened, Entravision reached back and said, hey, just come back. I don't have a manager position. I have a sales position, right? And if you can start, great. And I said, oh, you know what? I'll do it. And I'll stay, it was mid-November. And I said, but you know what? I'll take some time off. I'll start in January. How's that work? And they're like, okay, great. During that transition, I remember ABC, reached out and they wanted to hire me. I remember there's a big radio company from Mexico, Radio Mexico. And I remember getting a call from its CEO, Licenciado Aguirre, from Mexico City, calling me that he wanted me to, because they have stations in El Paso and Juarez. And, he wanted me to be, that he learned I wasn't at Univision Radio anymore. And he wanted me to manage the stations.
No surprise to me that other organizations would be trying to recruit you when you became available. I think it's the same radio group that Fernando Rubio went to work at, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And he kept throwing money, and I'll give you this much, and I give you this much, and I give you this much. And I told him, look, it's not about the money. And you're actually offering me more money than Entravision is. And you're actually giving me a better title than Entravision. But I said, I prayed about it, and what came out, and I have no idea why. I said, and that was back in December of 2011. I said, I have no idea why, but God told me Entravision, which it was a step down because I was just going to be a salesperson and it was going to be less money and what have you. I said, and I don't know why, but you know what? I know, right, that if I'm under his umbrella in the long term, it's going to be way better, right? There's no better place than to be under his protection. So I'm going to go with Entravision. So that's January. And then in April, I get a call from back then, the GM here in Albuquerque. And he's like, I'm looking for a sales manager. And the GM in El Paso told me that I needed to talk to you. So he buys me a plane ticket. I come here and I'm interviewing. It's an all-day thing. He drives me around the city, met a couple of people. And, he asked me how I do things, what I know, if I knew the traffic system, everything. And I answer all his questions. And then I remember back then, he's like, do you have any questions for me? And I said, no, I don't. He's like, I mean, why not? Like, you should be inquiring about, if this is a good fit for you, or is this going to be enough money if I, what I'm going to offer you? His name is Jeff Apodaca. He was our GM here back then. And I told Jeff, with all due respect, do you think I'm sitting in front of you today because last week you called me and you bought me a plane ticket? I said, I know that this happened for a reason. I said, when I lost my job in November, I didn't understand why, right? But I knew it was God's way of saying there's something different for you, right? And I said, and I didn't know why I picked Entravision, being the third out of the 4 people that wanted to hire me as far as payment or title. And I didn't understand why, but I went with it. Now I know why. Because his plan since November was for me to be in Albuquerque for whatever reason. And that's why. And he's like, and that's why I don't have anything to ask. And he's like, you do realize I'm still interviewing 5 more people. I said, yes, I do. But here's the thing. If it's God's will for me to be in Albuquerque, and he would tell me that the safest place would be in the middle of I-25, that's where I would be. So I have nothing to worry about. And if it's his will to be here in Albuquerque, there's nothing you or I could do about that because I'm just willing to go wherever he's calling me to go. He's like, well, okay, that's on you. It's like, okay. Next week, following week, he calls me. It's like, the job is here. I guess God had, wants you here. And then I became, I started here as a local sales manager in May of 2012. By May of 2015, I became the senior vice president. So I took his job and became the SVP here for Albuquerque, and I've been the SVP since then.
That's a great story, Carlos. I have a client in mind. He is also a believer and very devout person in the middle of job transition. And I know that he's going to appreciate this story because I'm a believer also, and I also trust that you are led to where you're supposed to be.
We always hear about the calling, right? And we usually think about priests, pastors, missionaries, but everyone has a calling. Everyone has a calling. You don't have to be behind an altar to have a calling. He has a calling because my altar is this office. Every person that comes here and talks to me, whether it be about work or whether it be about personal, is going to be the same. They're going to get the same treatment, right? Because if I can help somebody today, that was worth, me being here today. Like I said, back then I didn't know what's going to happen, but I knew there was a reason and there was a mission. I've had, job offers to go back to El Paso, which in Entravision's case, it would be a promotion. It would be more money, more stations, because in Entravision, they have more stations than we do here in Albuquerque. And to the company, it seemed logical that I would take the promotion because then I could go back to, where all of my family is, because I'm the only one that lives here in Albuquerque. And I've said no twice. And they're like, well, but why? It's like, because for whatever reason, my job here in Albuquerque is still not done. Because going back to El Paso, well, personally would be amazing. It does not give me peace, which means it's not God's will in my life and it's not my calling. I'm not here in life to just, look for money or better title or, better possessions. My drive and my motivation is to make something of my life where I can actually help something, right? Being great is not about you achieving the highest position. Being great is about helping others become great. The ones that are next to you, bring the best in them. Not only the best in them, but give them the best in yourself. And that's what drives me every day. That's why I come here to, always expecting what I'm going to be able to have the opportunity to do today to help somebody if giving the opportunity, right? Is what we call divine appointments. And when you don't look for them, you'll find them if you keep your eyes open.
You are listening to Latinos Who Thrive. We'll be right back.
This show is sponsored by ETC, Escalante Training and Consulting. Do you need more sales and greater productivity? For more than 2 decades, Victor Escalante has been training executives and companies in cultural communications, team building processes, sales competency, emotional intelligence, and project management. Find out how ETC is ready to help you by visiting their website at victorescalante.com.
We now return you to today's guest, Carlos Fourzan at Latinos Who Thrive.
Carlos, with your philosophy, I would imagine that you have had zero turnover with a big resignation that we are going through. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, actually, we have the same employees that we've had for years. Other than, for personal reasons, somebody getting married or, the spouse is moving out of town, we don't have turnover. I mean, unless there's after 20, the March of 2020 with COVID, there was a reduction in force. But other than that, we've had the same employees and the same team for years now.
And haven't you found that top performers are hard to find because people are not willing to commit and to do whatever it takes to succeed?
Nowadays, it's really hard to find, talent, like you said. I always told my team when I barely got here, right? And I told them, we're going to train, we're going to do this. And they were like, oh my goodness. And I said, look, training is a good thing because it keeps us, one, up to date, and two, it keeps us getting better. And you don't want to stay status quo because life is going to change. The media is going to change. And, we're ahead of the curve when it comes to digital sales than other bigger markets, right? Than Albuquerque. Why? Because we were preparing. And I said, just trust me in this one. It has helped me and it's going to help you. Just go along. And I said, because here's the thing. I can teach you anything you want, right? But if you don't have the attitude or the drive to grow and learn, that's something I cannot give you. You have to have it yourself. And when I barely got here, some people did leave after that. But then, like I said, since 2015, we've had the same sales team that we have had since then.
You develop your core group that had the same mindset. And again, it's no wonder that you guys are leading the market in digital sales. No real big surprise. You develop people and then people develop the marketplace.
And you know what? At first they don't see it and it's just a matter of time. But once they see it and they experience it, they're like, you're right. Okay, what's next? What's next? What's next?
They are converts. They are evangelists to whatever you tell them.
Yes. And they know, here's the thing. They know that anything that I've asked from them, I myself have done it in the past. Even in there's been a couple of times where my promotions manager, right? And obviously these were the times where we used to do a lot of radio remotes. Now they're less and less because of COVID or gatherings or whatever. But before, right? When we would have a radio remote and he would be sick on a Saturday, he knew that I would come to the station, grab the tent, grab all the, promotional items, get in the van, drive to the client, set up, do the radio call. I mean, and I was a remote tech, right? And even when I talk to other SVPs, they're like, are you crazy? No way, man. It's like the client doesn't care, right? If the remote tech is the one doing the call-ins or if the GM. What the owner cares is that there's a remote that he paid for, that he asked for, and he gets results. That my job is to make sure he's satisfied, whether it's Rude or myself.
What a winning philosophy that you have, Carlos. Tell me, what authors influenced you that you developed this winning mindset?
When it comes to storytelling, there's a guy by the name of Roy H. Williams, the Wizard of Ads.
I'm a graduate at Wizard Academy.
I read his Monday morning memos every week. I remember during COVID, right, when he started the weekly, when there would be at that, drinking wine and talking about just questions people had for free. Those 13 weeks were amazing, right? Every week I would, watch their video. But, when he went to El Paso, I went to one of his, when he went there to his, for a seminar for whatever. And once I saw him, it's like, this is so great, right? Because not coming from a marketing background, I needed to learn how to tell my story and how to influence it, how the brain works and what part of the brain works. And, when will the ad become more effective? So I've been following him since I'm going to say 2002, 2001, more or less. And like I said, every week I read his Monday morning memo.
Obviously, you've read all his books?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. Yes, great, very great read. Did you read his book on the 40-year cycle?
Yes, The Pendulum, which I was going to be like, understanding that, right, makes me, helps me understand where we are today and the changes. And the worst part is that we're not even hitting its peak. It's going to be until next year, right? So, and then the pendulum will coming down. But
just so we don't nerd out here for our listeners, why don't you go ahead and tell us, Carlos, how following Roy Williams has helped you to up your game? Give us some tips that you can attribute directly to Roy Williams' teachings.
Yes. So, the conversation started with, understanding ratings. What I did learn was it doesn't matter. You're not the top rated station, right? What matters is even if you have 1% share of their listening or watching audience, if you talk to that people, to those people in a way that makes sense, if I'm a business owner, I'm going to get an ROI. I just need to understand, right, who my tribe is, and then what is the common denominator or unites us, and then not be predictable when it comes to the messaging. Because when we become predictable, that's when they tune us out, right? So it's learning how to write commercials without sounding like commercials, right? It's not wasting time saying we're locally owned and operated in an ad, because that means nothing to people. Serving the Albuquerque community for 40 years, you're just wasting time, right? So if you only have 30 seconds, right, you have to maximize what you're going to say in a way that it's not going to be predictable. The other thing that I learned from him is about the pendulum, right? When in 2003, we started shifting from a me society to a we society, and how back then, it was all being number one. And if you talked, it has even helped me with my kids, right? Because we both were brought up during a time where, being number one, being the highest in the, climb the corporate ladder and be the best and be like James Bond and what have you. That's when we were, driven and to do better and better and better and better. Nowadays, the new generation, my kids' generation, they're not driven by that. It's like you tell them you want to just be number one, right? And they'll be like, "You're crazy. That's not even real." So there's a way to talk to the generation of today different than how we were brought up, and that also means that when you're writing, whether it be radio ads, TV ads, or nowadays, audio or video content, you have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Have you taken any trainings at Wizard Academy?
I have not personally taken any. No, that is one thing in my bucket list, though.
Highly, highly recommend it. It will be a milestone in your career development and also personal development, because Wizard Academy is something to be experienced. It's much more than just work related. It's so deep that you walk out of there a changed person.
Yes, I believe that. Like I said, even just following and reading even helped me how I deal with when my kids were growing up, right? Now they're all between the ages of 22 and 28, but during their teenage years and, high school years, and even now, listening to him and how the mind works and how society is changing and will change, it helped me, talk to my kids and help them, adapt to this new type of society that we're living in, where it's more of a we
Correct.
instead of a me society.
Who else has had a big impact in your personal development?
It's going to be, I remember when I was in the automotive market, the owner of the warehouse, his name is Javier Martinez, and he is from El Paso. Seeing the dedication, right, and the drive to stay long hours and just do the best possible job, he helped me. But I think in my media career, the sales manager back in the day when I was in research, John Burton in El Paso, the way he would go about doing his job in everything, whether it be, I remember when I was in research, right, and I would put together PowerPoint presentations, and he would look them over, right, and I would print them and I would take them, and he would notice the smallest things, like the title is not lined up with like the bottom where you have the source, or they have, it's not aligned, it's not the perfect, it's not the same font, or it's not the same, sometimes you have capital letters, sometimes you have, and he would make all these like changes, right? To me, at first, I would get bothered because as a research director, I was just thinking, what matters is the information, right? Is the content. It's not the looks of it. And then he would tell me, no. Again, everything you do is a reflection of you. I'm doing this for you, right? And he would be like a professor of marketing and TV media sales, where he would tell me, look at this video, or learn about this, or learn about that. Think about this, and I learned the most that I've learned from somebody in broadcast was him.
That's amazing. I'm a believer that you are a product of the people that you aspire to be in your trajectory in life. That is great that you had exposure to someone like him. What would you advise, Carlos, to someone that doesn't have someone like that to mentor them?
The one advice I would give is this, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you have mentors, whether or not, you're inspired by Sunday sermon or podcasts or whatever, having those tools or those people in your side, fantastic, right? But if you don't, at the end of the day, you can still have all this, but if the motivation is not coming from within you, it's not going to help, right? Because how many people do you know, after a Sunday sermon, they leave church all pumped, and then Monday comes around and it's gone, right? Why? Because life happens, problem happens, circumstances are not favorable, and it's gone. And you need to have this sense of personal destiny that, that you are destined to do greatness. And this drive that's going to come from within you, that you're going to find, the motivation is within you and your faith, and not so much between the four walls of where you work. So there is greatness inside of everyone. So there's greatness inside of you, whoever's listening. It's just a matter of, it's not going to come up by itself. You have to work, you have to keep moving, and you have to find, right, those opportunities and step into them. Some opportunities are going to be people, dreams, podcasts, but some, you still going to learn, and you still need to keep going forward towards greatness, right? If your motivation is somebody else's position, somebody else's money, or, I want what this person has, or I want this job, if that's your motivation, you're not stepping towards greatness, because you're doing that out of either greed, envy, jealousy, and that in the long run is not going to sustain you. That in the long run is not going to give you the persistence and determination to keep moving forward, even when there are going to be times that things are going to be tough. So my recommendation is find that, right, fire inside of you and keep moving forward.
Fire in the belly. Tell me, Carlos, what challenges or obstacles have you had to overcome to get to where you're at, other than losing your job when there was reduction in employees?
Being in, and I guess it affects every business, but I've gone through 9/11. I've gone through the recession of 2017, 2018. I've gone through coronavirus, right? I'm still here. So there's going to be really bad, things outside of your control that are going to affect how you're doing things, that are going to affect your results in the short term. Learn, right? And it's like in the movie, remember that racing movie with Tom Cruise, Days of Thunder, right? And
yes.
after the crash he has, and the last chance they put him on Daytona, and he's like in last place, just pretty much driving normal speed. And then there's a big crash, right? And his main guy in the team, I don't know what the term is, but it's just, and he's like saying, just go on top, trust it, just give it all that you got, keep your gas, your foot on the pedal. And he trusts him, right? And he goes through it. And then after that, he's like, his confidence regains. Okay, it's the same thing. There's going to be a time where you might have a crash and you're afraid, or, there's a recession, or there's this and that, there's coronavirus, there's shutting downs, and it's out of your control. And you're like, I was great at what I was doing. That just means that, you know what? It's rough right now. Trust what you have learned. Get more, adapt to the new way of doing things, and just keep your foot on the pedal and drive through the smoke, because you will come out ahead. When you start hitting the brakes and when you stop and and fear, right, stops you, that's when you stop growing. And then you become affected by the circumstances outside of you. But as long as you keep that gas, that foot on the gas pedal and keep moving forward, you're going to come out okay at the end. And you're going to come out better. Like I said, 9/11, I remember everybody calling, canceling, so many cancellations, right? So many people left the industry. And you know what? For a while, it was rough, but I stayed. And And even though I didn't have a marketing degree like the other guys, I remember having one of my sales, colleagues saying when I started that he had an advantage over me because he had a marketing degree from Northwestern. And I said, well, yeah, but that's not going to open the doors for clients. It's what you do with the title that's going to help you, right? I survived 9/11. He didn't. After 2017 and 18, again, a lot of cancellations because the economy was really bad. A lot of people left the industry. I had some few bad weeks, but stay through, and we came out ahead. 2020, again, a lot of cancellations, shutdowns. Everybody was closed here in New Mexico for the longest time. Just keep on learning, right? Now that means the way you used to do things, it's not going to help. But at the end of the day, you just keep doing, right? So to me, right, my master plan has not changed, even though I've gone through those, series of things, because my master plan, right, which is live the life I was created to be. That's my master plan. Yes, I've had different plans, whether it be working for Entravision, Univision Radio, El Paso, Albuquerque. Those were just plans that were leading, right, to my master plan. And once that plan does not serve the master plan, you just create a new plan, but the master plan never changes. So you just create a new plan that's going to serve the master plan, and then work on that and learn and keep changing and adapting. And then once that plan doesn't work for the master plan, it doesn't serve its purpose, you create another plan. But the master plan never changes, right? Whether it be your personal life or your work life, you must have a master plan, and then have plans that are going to be changing or adapting, because once that doesn't serve the master plan, you need a new plan, and that's it.
Carlos, one final question. What advice would you give to your younger self?
If I had a chance to tell, Carlos when he was 22 years, would be, don't say yes to instant pleasures, because one of the things that I've learned is, like I said earlier, saying yes to something means saying no to something else. And I know I missed a lot of opportunities that would have gotten me to where I'm at today, probably faster or better or with less disasters.
That is great advice. I want to thank you for joining us. From me to you, it was a great pleasure to reconnect with you after nearly 20 years. And like I said from the outset, it's like I knew you were a champion because of your due diligence in giving me all the reports that I asked you for. And even when I came back to you for additional reports, you always said yes. You always were very willing to give me the data that I requested. And thank you so much for your hard work in helping me to have such a success in production of several talk shows. I will follow your trajectory because you are definitely, like Sonny Melendres from El Paso, the famous broadcaster, says, you're almost halfway there.
Yes. Well, thank you for the invite. It was great connecting with you once again. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. If there's anything I can ever do for you, feel free to reach out.
I will. You have a wonderful day.
You too.